Good morning, beautiful souls. The sun just rose here. I'm still in my bathrobe and I'm just feeling inspired to make a video. So here we are. So I've been deconstructing Neo Advaita for about 4 years now, and just the plot just continues to thicken. And what I realize is, so actually, before we go any further, I just like to make it clear, I'm not a guru. I'm not enlightened. I still suffer sometimes. That, for me, that's really a great determiner of whether someone's enlightened or not, is do they still suffer? And I definitely still suffer. So I've been deconstructing Neo Advaita for about 4 years, and I just every week, if not every day, there's just another insight in the difference between traditional non-duality and Neo Advaita. So, and here's today's aha. And so I go back in time. One of the Neo Advaita teachers who I had the most, really the most contact with, someone who I studied with and worked with for years, actually. I genuinely believe that this person, he went beyond suffering. He said he doesn't suffer anymore, and he didn't do the normal Neo Advaita word game of who is it that could suffer? Only the personality could suffer. He was a very genuine person. He's like, I just don't suffer anymore. And, in my relationship, issues come up, things come up from the past, but it just doesn't stick. It's like it just doesn't get me, grab me. And he's very genuine and very humble, and I believe him, because he didn't, one way to tell the Neo Advaita teacher from a real one is they play these weird kind of word games, especially if you ask them anything about them, about their personality. They'll be like, there is no person, or who is it that could suffer? Like, if let the word games begin. But a traditional Advaita teacher is very comfortable just using ordinary language. See, a Neo Advaita teacher has changed their thinking, but not really, but hasn't had the real shift in consciousness. They've just had a shift in belief systems. But this person had. And so the reason why I call him a Neo Advaita teacher is because he just wasn't trained in traditional Advaita Vedanta. And so he gave satsangs for years, but he wasn't able to lead anyone to awakening because he didn't teach preparatory practices. And interestingly enough, at one point in time, he had a traditional Indian guru, and through a variety of life experiences, he acquired most of, I won't say 100%, but most of the necessary preparatory practices for self-inquiry. And then he practiced self-inquiry and his suffering ended. But since he wasn't trained in Advaita Vedanta philosophy, he wasn't really able to lead anyone else there. And in our conversations, when I first started studying with and getting to know him, I didn't really understand the difference. I didn't really have the knowledge I have now. And then at a certain point, as we would talk, one day he just looked at me and he's like, you know more than me. And I looked at him and I said, well, I may have the recipe, but you've got the cake, sure, I have more. And I would agree with him. I have more of an understanding of the philosophy, but this dude is free and peaceful. And he just wasn't able to lead others there. And he found his way there in a very non-traditional manner. So that's one, I'm going to calling him a quasi-guru, because I genuinely believe that he's really found freedom. So there's this other guy who I've encountered online, and um, I think he's found, I don't know him personally, so I can't say, but I think he's found genuine freedom. He says that suffering has ended, and I've listened to some of his YouTube. He seems pretty genuine. Yeah, I take it with a grain of salt because I haven't hung out with them or met them. And this other person, like I literally got to know him over like a 15-year period. So, but this YouTube, this other guy who I've encountered their writings and their YouTube stuff, um, I get the feeling that he's had the shift in consciousness. But once again, he's not had any traditional training. So he'll say just ridiculous things like, you don't need to prepare yourself for enlightenment. Whereas traditional Advaita Vedanta is like, you absolutely have to prepare yourself. And he'll say things like, you are an illusion. The you that thinks you're separate is an illusion. And Advaita Vedanta will say, uh, the belief that you are separate is an illusion. The belief that you are the personality is an illusion. But it won't say that the personality is an illusion. That's like, in traditional Advaita Vedanta, that's just nonsense, like absurd beyond words. I don't even have, I, I haven't even quite, now that I've started studying with a traditional Advaita guru, I don't even know where to begin of the absurdity of that. Maybe I'll talk about that in a little bit. And this guy will say things like, what was the other one I recently read? Oh yeah, this was great. He's like, there's nothing to do. He's like, it just descended on me one day, grace, and everything shifted. But then he'll also say, if you want to attain enlightenment, you just need to sit and be still. So he's teaching contradictory teachings. He'll, on the one hand, he'll say, there's nothing to do. And on the other hand, he'll say, you need to sit and just be, which is another form of self-inquiry. And that's pretty common with Neo Advaita teachers, is they'll teach two contradictory messages. There's nothing to do since you're already enlightened, and or just practice self-inquiry without preparations. So what an interesting paradox. We have one person and maybe a second who are free of suffering. In essence, have attained enlightenment. The word enlightenment isn't even talked about in traditional non-duality. It's called mukti or moksha. So theoretically, these two people have attained mukti or moksha, but yet they're not able to lead others there. They don't understand how they got there, and hence they can't lead others there. So, for a long time, I've taught on this channel that Neo Advaita teachers aren't free. And so now I need to append that and say, I think a small minority of them are actually free. That doesn't mean you should listen to them or follow them, because they don't know how they got there. And they certainly can't lead other people there. And, this second teacher offers no guidelines for how to live. The first teacher who I talked about, they were very active in a spiritual path before their awakening that offers a valid way of life. And the first teacher actually guides people on a relative level of of self-care and how to live a harmonious life. The second Neo-Advaita teacher I'm talking about is just like, life is a game, so just play it. So that's my morning realization is there's a very small minority of Neo-Advaita teachers who are actually free of suffering, or maybe we'll say mostly. I don't know if they're fully free. So that's all I have to share for right now. I notice I've got some live viewers. If you have questions or comments, feel free to post them. I'm reminded of another Neo Advaita teacher who I didn't get to know them. They saw one of my writings and they just like really, kind of laid into me personally. And I checked them out. And so this person, I mean, this is a great example of the insanity of Neo Advaita. So this person is a compulsive overeater. They have an eating disorder. They're struggling with severe depression. They sleep, like they oversleep. I can't remember whether it was like 10, 12 hours a day, which is something that extremely depressed people do. And they're claiming they're enlightened. Oh, and they teach law of attraction. For those of you who are familiar, law of attraction is the idea that we create our reality with our mind, and the way to be happy is to create the life you want. So we have an extremely depressed person who's addicted, who's teaching law of attraction and simultaneously teaching non-duality. So basically they had an awakening experience, and then they concluded from that they were enlightened and decided that they were a guru and they should go teach people. I think that's one of the silliest and tragic because of this false idea. And this is something I struggled with for years. I never thought I was enlightened, but I thought I was spiritually superior to everyone. Well, actually, there were lots of moments where I thought I was enlightened. Like I would do self-inquiry and the ego would settle down and I'd be like, oh my God, I found it. This is it. I'm free. And that would last for a moment or a minute or an hour, and then the suffering would come back and eclipse that clarity. But I never went around for extended periods of time being like, I'm free. But I did think I was spiritually superior to others. And so I also thought, oh, I don't need anything other than self-inquiry. And that kept me from doing the preparatory practices. And it kept me from taking care of myself. Like self-care is actually an essential part of traditional Advaita. They don't call it self-care. They call it self-mastery. Cultivating and developing a balanced personality. Without that, enlightenment can't stick. And so this poor guy who has a severe addiction, severe depression, like thinks he's enlightened. So he's not going to go do counseling or take medication or work on himself to tend to these personality issues because he thinks he's enlightened. And I had my own version of that. I didn't think I was enlightened. I just thought Neo Advaita was true. So to close where I I think the most, so in my mind, so Neo Advaita is full of delusion, but the two key delusions are there's nothing to do since you're already enlightened, and or you don't need to do any preparatory practices. And both of them are so harmful because they disconnected me from life, from taking care of what needs to be taken care of, including taking care of my responsibilities, right? Like the second teacher I talked about today, he's like, life is a game, just play. Well, traditional Advaita says you need to live by Dharma, which is harmony and righteousness. And so not only is it a false philosophy, it offers false guidance on how to live life. In the first Neo Advaita teacher I spoke of, he really stands out. I've encountered a lot of Neo Advaita teachers, but the thing about him is first of all, he had a genuine guru whom he left, but also he had spiritual training in another tradition that taught the importance of a balanced, harmonious life. And interestingly enough, he stopped teaching satsang at a certain point. Something that most Neo Advaita, I don't know exactly why. I'm assuming. Hey, Anton, see your comment. I'll get to it in a sec. Anton wrote, self-inquiry nowadays just feels like putting myself to deep sleep. It just feels like going the wrong way. I'm done turning away from the world. It leads nowhere. Why would outward attention be a mistake of awareness consciousness? Anton, I'm going to take a picture of that, and at some point I intend to make a whole video about that. It's beautiful. I won't mention you by name, especially your first comment. Let's see here. I'm taking a picture. One sec. So, I just couldn't have said it better. So, the thing is it's not just self-inquiry is taught by Ramana, isn't just turning away from the world. It's turning away from your personality, right? It's turning away from your thoughts, your feelings, and your desires. That's only appropriate for someone who is a renunciate monk or nun. Or who is, you can be like a householder renunciate, where you just, from a very balanced place, you're just not interested in worldly activities. You're not interested in relationships. You're not interested in pleasure, hobbies, not because you're depressed, but because you have that detachment. And so Adi Shankara lists 4 prerequisites to self-inquiry. The first one is meditation and understanding the difference between that which is temporary and that which is eternal. The second is cultivation of detachment, cultivation of vairagya. Detachment's a bad translation. Vairagya means like binding desire. It's not ending desire. It's a complex. And so to practice self-inquiry before you've done that, it's just dangerous because it just puts you at war with yourself until you've cultivated vairagya. And then after that, the third requirement is the cultivation of these 6 qualities. And these 6 qualities are literally, they make you like a monk or a nun. And then the fourth is cultivating the desire for liberation, that's all that you really want. And so without these 4 preparations, hey Yoshi, without these 4 preparations, self-inquiry is dangerous because it puts you at war with yourself. Ramana and Shankara don't talk about how it's dangerous, probably because they wouldn't teach it to anyone who, because it's basically, Ramana just said it's impossible to follow the path of self-inquiry without those prerequisites. And Shankara said the quest for Brahman will fail, Brahman being the one reality, without those prerequisites. So this was before the internet and before Neo Advaita, became a virus on the internet. So I don't know why they didn't speak to the dangers, but I can from personal experience, because it creates this crazy tug of war. And Anton, you're right. Self-inquiry initially does create a sleep-like state. It creates a state of complete detachment from the world. If you don't already have that, self-inquiry isn't designed to create detachment. It'll give you a temporary state of detachment. But if that's not your personality or mood, then when you stop, as soon as you stop practicing self-inquiry, then attachment returns, and then comes this weird, crazy tug of war. Yoshi wrote, Neo Advaita teachers claim that enlightenment is simply a matter of realizing that you are already enlightened. No practice needed, which is dangerous. I would add to that, in my view, there's kind of two types of Neo Advaita teachers. That's one type. I call the type you're talking about Neo Advaita. And then that's like, I call it, there's the nothing to do Neo Advaita. Nothing to do since you're already enlightened Neo Advaita. And the other type is just inquire Neo Advaita. Just practice self-inquiry. Like, yes, you're already enlightened, and just practice self-inquiry without the preparations. I call that the just inquire without prepare Neo Advaita. And I concur. Neo Advaita is very dangerous because it teaches people to not take care of your personality, of the relative self in the world. My cat is meowing to be let in, so I'm going to go let her in. If anyone else has any other questions or comments, please post them. See, I was at war with myself for so long because of Neo Advaita philosophy and because of practicing self-inquiry. I was 50% like completely not interested in the world. But my personality, my thoughts, my feelings, my heart was very much interested in the world and wanted to find meaningful work and have relationships and have hobbies. And so it created this crazy war with myself, which, thank you, higher power. Thank you, grace. Thank you, Jesus and friends. Thank you to the traditional guru I'm studying with now. That war has ended. Yoshi, boom. Roshi wrote, that is why Bhakti and Karma Yoga are important. So in the lineage of traditional Advaita Vedanta that I'm studying with, they say Karma Yoga is non-negotiable. Meaning if you want to pursue the non-dual path, you must. Karma Yoga is the foundation. And yes, and in fact, I don't want to quote. I don't have permission to sort of spread my teacher's teachings. That's why I'm not. But yes, Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, having a relationship with God, higher power, the creator, and the attitude of Karma Yoga are considered, well, as they say in the lineage I'm studying with, it's non-negotiable. You want to pursue the non-dual path, you got to learn Karma Yoga before you practice self-inquiry. Yoshi wrote, Neo Advaita can lead people to having superficial or even traumatic enlightenment experiences, a bit like psychedelics. Yoshi, I'm loving your insights. I think you've been on and shared once or twice. But yeah, what you're saying, yes. I've heard it said really well. It's called depersonalization. I can't remember the exact word. It's like where you dissociate from your personality and you dissociate from reality. I can't think of the word right now, but that's right. You can have traumatic awakening experiences. It's very true. Through if you're not prepared. And that's why Adi Shankara taught the preparatory practices. And that's why, as did Ramana, and with the two people who, the two, so I spoke about 3 Neo Advaita, the first 2 teachers today. The first 2 I spoke about, I believe they've found a high degree, if not full freedom, but they're not able to lead other people there because they don't understand the philosophy. And the philosophy isn't so much the philosophy as it is the process. See, Advaita Vedanta is a process. Neo Advaita is a formula. And part of the process, thank you, Yoshi, for that clear pointing out, part of the non-negotiable. And so Neo Advaita is kind of just this like, do whatever, like just inquire, go to satsang. It's kind of like these teachers kind of making things up, where traditional Advaita is like this systematic process. And you don't get to change the process. You don't get to you don't get to pick certain parts. Swami Dhyanananda, I'm reading his book right now. Actually, I'm going to grab his book. His book is fantastic. One sec. Swami Dhyanananda says, if you follow the process, you will experience liberation. But you don't get to determine the process. So surrender to a guru doesn't mean that you give them all your money or have to do everything that they say in a kind of in an unhealthy way, but it means you need to follow the process. And I don't know if I can find the quote here, but I think I will try, because it's very. Here's a quote from Swami Dhyanananda, and this is the book Tattva Bodha with commentary. All you require. So we need to establish that Advaita Vedanta, he says Vedanta, he means Advaita Vedanta, is an independent pramana. That means a means of coming to knowledge. Without any other help, it is an independent means of knowledge. All you require is a prepared mind. If the mind is there, this knowledge takes place, meaning if you follow the pramana. Whether you like it, in the alignment of the pramana, the object of knowledge, knowledge, it takes place without taking permission from you. And this is proven all the time by your nose. Whether you like it, you pick up different fragrances and smells. This is the nature of a pramana. A pramana, it means something that gives knowledge. In order to safeguard Vedanta, again, Advaita Vedanta, as a pramana, a means of knowledge, we need to point out the prescribed qualifications. Only with these in place does the pramana work. So a nose is a means of knowledge. It gives you information, and it gives the information automatically. And like he said before, whether you like it or not, the nose gives you that information. Well, if you have a prepared mind and you expose yourself to traditional Advaita Vedanta under the guidance of a teacher, what he's saying is the knowledge will come. That just as the nose is a reliable source of knowledge for smells, like it just comes. That if the mind is properly prepared, and if you're under the tutelage of an actual guru, the knowledge will just come. Not immediately. It takes time. It's a process. And that's what Advaita Vedanta says. Neo Advaita is kind of like this free-for-all. Beautiful comments, Yoshi. Thank you. Anton, why would we be able to let our personality and human qualities I think you mean flourish, and still understand what is orchestrating everything. Can't we be fully involved in life with feeling entangled and suffer? Well, that's a great question. And I'm tempted to give an answer. I've learned an answer from my teacher. The truth is, for me to do that, I need to start teaching non-duality, which is what I don't do, because I'm not enlightened. I'm not a qualified guru. It's a great question, and I would encourage you to seek out a qualified guru. What I do on this channel is I help people differentiate between Neo Advaita and actual non-duality, and then point them in the direction of a qualified teacher. So I'm going to put a link to my web page. I have a list of teachers there. And hold on one sec. And so what I will say is in traditional Advaita, it's not an either or. You don't negate the personality. The personality gets included in the process. And the cultivation of the personality and the personality flourishing is part of traditional Advaita Vedanta. And I'm going to put, there's a teacher who I've just recently found, who I have deep respect for, who I haven't put up on my webpage yet. I'll do that. I'm going to do that right after this chat. So Advaita Vedanta says, yes, you can be fully involved in life without feeling entangled and suffer if you do it from a place of Dharma. So what Dharma says, see the difference. So there's kind of two approaches to life. There's karma yoga and there's boga. Boga means, and you could say boga yoga. Boga, that's not a traditional term. I'm kind of joking. There's boga and there's karma yoga. There's also sannyasi, but we'll leave that aside for a moment. Boga means you do things for yourself, for enjoyment and pleasure. Karma yoga is you do your duty out of an act of service. And within that realm, yes, you can find enjoyment. Yes, your personality can flourish. But if you're doing things for your own enjoyment, then suffering's inevitable. That's what Advaita Vedanta says. I feel comfortable saying that. For more, I would encourage you, invite you to find a traditional guru who could take you deeper into that. Beautiful question, Anton and Yoshi. Love your comments and your input. And actually, Anton, I may speak further to your question. It really gets at Neo Advaita doesn't have a dependable answer to that. But what I gave you is sort of the basic Advaita Vedanta answer, is the two are not separate, that the path of self-mastery is and self-mastery, really just the path of Dharma. And that includes tending to yourself and bringing your gifts forward as an act of service. All right, beautiful souls. Thank you so much for joining in. I wish everyone a Neo Advaita free day. Take care.